The Prisoner of Azkaban with the Sioux Empire Podcast.
A pathless wilderness, wild, rugged, that would... A hardy frontier, far from the paths of civilization.
If you close your eyes, you can pretend it's North Dakota.
Where fortune beckons with a glittering smile.
Well, have you seen South Dakota, Sean? They're insanely hot!
And life hung on the quickness of a trigger finger.
I will do my best to listen more intently.
The Sioux Empire Podcast.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the Sioux Empire Podcast. I am your host, Robert Mailing, and this is the Sioux Empire Podcast, the quirky but harmless podcast that's all about Sioux Empire news, comedy, music, and culture. This week, we will be doing another rendition of Seth's Book Club. Seth is going to tell us all about...
The Inhabitant of Carcosa.
The Inhabitant of Carcosa. Let's go ahead and slide on in. Oh, yeah.
What's that sound? It's the sound of Seth's Sioux Empire Podcast bi-weekly book club. The books aren't about the Sioux Empire, but Seth reads them in the Sioux Empire.
Tell us a story.
Okay, Rob, this week's story is entitled An Inhabitant of Carcosa, and it's by Ambrose, Bierce, a name our listeners have heard. If you're a bi-weekly book club member, which there's the Sioux Empire Podcast, that's where you sign up to be a bi-weekly book club member.
And you sign up by listening.
Exactly. And putting in your email address on our website, thesioux-empirepodcast.com, and that's how you join the bi-weekly book club. Just like everyone else, you will not know what the book is until I've given my report on it, so it's not one of those things like Oprah does.
You don't have to read. I mean, who the hell wants that from their book club? I mean, really.
I'm inspiring them to read maybe
I just
really
mean in
short
advance.
story.
It's not like a test. We're not like you got to come prepared to listen, you know.
No, not at all. If you've been to a 5th grade book review, book report, you've prepared enough for this sort of thing.
So is that what this week's one is going to be like? So, Mrs. Hoover, the Inhabitant of Carcosa it's got a lot to say about inhabitants, and it's got a lot to say about Carcosa and things around Carcosa.
Yeah, that's not how it's pronounced, but it's Rob, so...
Croatia?
Yeah, that's more close. That's closer, yeah, more close.
No,
Closer.
it's Carcosa.
Yeah, Carcosa.
Carcosa. Like the car. I gotcha.
Yeah, it's not working the Carcosa. I did yoga today. Well, not the day that this comes out. But if you did do yoga the day that this came out, congratulations.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
You think you're better than me? You think you're better than me?
You know, well, maybe you can do a better downward dog, but that doesn't make you better than me. I mean, it does at the downward dog.
Right, and probably other things, but yeah. So, The Inhabitant.
This one's another great one by Ambrose Bierce. He's got a very distinct writing style and storytelling style where there's always at the end of the story, there's just like a... And that was, of course, known by all in the land that it was Frederick Douglass who wrote the Constitution, and that is why all of this happened. Sorry, I
like how you just, like, Mad Libs a historical event, a name that sounds like a historical figure, and... I mean, he's a historical figure, but, yeah.
He's real. He's historic.
It's like 100 years after that,
real
but yeah.
Living right now, not doing work. Sorry, but I just want to read the last line. Such are the facts imparted to the medium Bayrolls by the spirit Husbib Alabrabardian, Why did I read the last sentence? It's got so much shit that I can't pronounce in it. So...
What the hell?
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
So, did this guy do, like... Because, I mean, I only knew him from Owl Creek Bridge.
An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge,
Yeah.
and also One Summer Night, which I have also done on the bi-weekly.
Right. But, like, originally, before you started the book club, that's all I knew him from was An Occurrence on the Owl Creek Bridge. And then we did that other story that was super interesting, and then this one sounds like almost Lovecraftian with the, like, exotic names and locales and stuff like that. And I'm just like, was this guy, like, a proto-Lovecraft, almost? And I would never have guessed it, because the only thing you ever hear about him in history books is, like, a Civil War writer who wrote an Occurrence on the Owl Creek Bridge. And it's like, oh... But apparently he's got, like, a much richer bibliography than I ever realized.
Well, you know, I'm not going to BS on the bi-weekly book club. So I'm not going to say that I've read a lot of Lovecraft and that I can compare the two, but he's just... let me see, I'm trying to get to this page. Anyway.
So... Give us like even the premise or like the starting point of the story.
So classic Ambrose Bierce, he sets up the setting, the scene in vivid detail throughout most of it. I mean, there's really hardly he gets into the character or what he's doing for a good portion of the beginning. Or I mean, there's he goes into these setting really in depth. And in his own style that is kind of wandering and not necessarily filling all the details that you might be used to, but at the same time giving you enough details to keep you interested, and so letting you kind of fill in the blanks and sort of create the narrative that you want. As while you're reading this, you're kind of setting it up for what you're expecting, and he's doing that. He's giving you the details that are just kind of like leading you, and it's another gotcha, there's a lot of stories in this book, because this should be, at least for the last year, Seth reads from one book's collections of horror stories. It really, bi-weekly horror book club. So this one has another twist ending, and it's got a callback to the famous movie Back to the Future.
What?
Really calling back to it, with the old tombstone...
Oh.
Well, headstone sort of seeing of names that you recognize.
Great.
So really calling back to that famous movie Back to the Future.
What movie is
A
that?
lot of references to pop culture in these 3 pages.
And it's only 3 pages? Oh,
it's
damn.
Only 3 pages. But
okay.
Yeah, it packs a lot of shit in it. And, it, once again, it sort of plays on, like, your fear of, it plays on the fear of mortality, yeah. Just like sort of, I mean, in every story he has death as sort of a main theme, or at least something that is like front and center. Well, on a summer night, you've got the setting is a graveyard. An Occurrence at a Owl Creek Bridge.
It's an execution.
It's an execution, yeah, exactly. And this one is kind of no different. You have an ill guy starting out.
Yeah, you could tell he'd be a contemporary, or... I don't remember for sure where Poe is at timeline-wise, but he's got to be around the same time as Poe, if not a little before or after or something. Well, he's got to be a little bit after or during, because Poe is...
He is way after. He's about 50 years after.
Okay.
Poe wrote The Telltale Heart in 1843.
Oh, that's right.
He wrote this most recent one that we're doing Ambrose Bierce wrote this in 1887.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, he's way different time period. So, but Poe came first. But he's reminding me a lot of Poe, is why I brought that up.
Yeah, I'd say so. He definitely doesn't... Poe had, at least from The Telltale Heart, he had such a rhythm to his writing that, that's unmatchable. That story is unmatchable.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's like Lovecraft, who is kind of the successor of the writers that wrote like that back in the day. His style is like totally unique. I was just watching extra credits on YouTube. They do like literature analysis, and right now they're doing a whole like the history of sci-fi. And they did, when they finally got to H.P. Lovecraft, they were talking about how he wrote into the Pulp magazine and was like, you have 3 writers who are not totally terrible and unredeemable. Here are 7 stories that you will publish, but you will publish them without touching anything about them, and blah, blah, blah. And the editor was like, but they were really good. It's like a style, it's like a Poe. It's not Poe style, but it's one like it, where it's just like, oh, that's a Lovecraft story there. Like, every word was carefully calculated and chosen, and, it's like they have their own signature. And I'm starting to... I didn't know before you started doing this that Ambrose had a very distinct signature like that, and I kind of like it.
Oh, yeah, he definitely does. Started out with some very, haughty words. I'm not sure if that's... Oh, fudge. I moved the bookmark. Anyway, there's a lot of, like, oh, hey, I found it. A lot of F's, a lot of adding to, like, vanish F and die F, and there's a lot of that in the first.
Oh yeah, he's going for like archaic pronunciations.
Yeah, I dig his word selection a lot.
Very good. So you would recommend this story?
It will expand your vocabulary, and it's not that. If you buy just this book, I think you'd be spending money on a piece of paper, honestly, because that's how long it is. So I mean, it's but it's a really good story. I'm not saying that buying the book would be bad, but
check
I'm
it
just
out on
saying
YouTube.
That it's small. It's very small. So yeah, and it's on YouTube. You can listen to it. Natasha.
Come on, Natasha. Okay.
Okay.
Close enough. We'll accept that for now, but I want you to practice, and then next podcast, I want us to be able to do a full Gregorian chant. I think if we pull together as a team, we can do this.
Harmony, harmony.
Okay.
Very well. And this has been
Seth's Bi-Weekly Book Club. I'm so glad that we could, get you on the line here to talk to you.
Yeah, and I miss South Dakota dearly. So I'm on a hiking trail in Griffith Park right now, and the hiking is nice, but it doesn't really hold a candle to like walking on a trail in the prairie, or even like walking on any trail in the Black Hills. It just doesn't. And people here take it really seriously. Like, they'll get their camelbacks on, and they'll hike. But it's not a hike. It's a paved road, and there's tons of people on it. And it's just like a very, like, minute gradation, as opposed to in South Dakota, where you're in the Black Hills, actual hiking. So I think these people haven't actually hiked before, which is amusing to me.
I understand that from, whenever you go to a bigger area, these people's conceptions of being out in wilderness is a little bit different than ours here in South Dakota.
They have no concept. It's pretty great.
No.
Like zero, because they're like, oh yeah, I love nature. I'm like, you don't know what nature is.
Exactly. You have not been in the wild. You've just been in just outside the suburbs.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. We're practically like Lord of the Flies where we come from. So I think that's. I think they have no concept.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was watching the trailer for Tater Tot and Patton, and I mean the scenery, the South Dakota scenery in that. Dude, you encapsulate South Dakota so well. It just screams South Dakota.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. Thank you. That was one of the main reasons I made that movie. Was I love this state. I'm not originally from it. My family is, like my extended family, but I'm not originally. I didn't grow up here. But one of the reasons that I think I acclimated it so well was because of the nature. Mm-hmm. And one of the number two reason I made this was because I wanted people to feel how I felt when I would walk off into the prairie in Pierre. Because in Pierre you can drive a mile and you're in the prairie, and I wanted people to feel what it was like to stand in the middle of somewhere, and you could spin your body around 360 degrees and see nothing but sky and land. And that's something that I just tried to capture in this. Is kind of that there's a kind of a there's a tandem like isolation, and then also what's the word? And then kind of an opportunistic thing that comes from that. You feel nature. I guess I said this. I did a little Argus interview, but nature belittles as much as it nourishes. I think that South Dakota kind of encapsulates that, and so that's what I was definitely trying to capture that in the movie.
Yeah, even like I've lived in Denver for a year, and it was definitely a big change there. But even living in Sioux Falls here, lived here since 2012. It's I kind of long for that isolation sort of feeling of going out into the prairie and just looking all around you and seeing nothing. It's actually really comforting, and people wouldn't suspect that.
No, I think it is, and I think there's so many people that never experience that. I mean, living out here in Los Angeles, there's a lot of people who don't experience that. But I think if they ever experienced it even once, they would realize the necessity of it, so to speak.
Yeah, and the grandeur.
And I think, and again, like, another reason that nature scenery is important to me is, like, one of my favorite artists is Harvey Dunn, and I think that he captures that sort of lonely yet opportunistic aesthetic very well. And so I won't lie, we definitely took paintings of Harvey Dunn and sat there and went, okay, let's just replicate this. And then there's even in the, if you haven't, I assume you haven't seen the movie yet, but even in the movie there are pictures, Harvey Dunn paintings on the walls,
nice.
And whatnot. So it was very deliberate in that sense.
That's a nice homage to your inspiration. I like that. And Harvey Dunn was also really good at painting women who worked, women on the prairie, and the movie definitely has that theme in there as well, like a woman coming to the prairie. So there's all kinds of fun South Dakota things in there. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I am absolutely, like I said, I just watched the trailer and I loved it, and just want to see what it's about. I read the Argus Leader article interview that you did with them, and you said that it'd be slowly moving out and getting out to streaming services. Do you know or where kind of in the process are you on that? Is it going to be can I catch it here in Sioux Falls soon? Or?
We're in the process right now of the movie is on the festival circuit, including we have Fargo Film Festival coming up, and the Beloit International Film Festival coming up, and a few others on the docket. And then from there, at the same time, we're starting to put the movie in front of companies. Our lead actress also just had a really big movie come out last fall, so that's been helping us get into doors. And so once we find that a distributor, then the goal is to put it out on VOD, and then in South Dakota specifically, we'll probably do a targeted theatrical release in Sioux Falls, in Pierre and Rapid, and then other local theaters. And if we have a major distributor pick us up, we might even be able to get into the Century Cinemas. But we have a great relationship with Westmall, so we'd probably just go that route anyway.
Okay, nice. Well, we
so I can't give you a target date on that because that would be irresponsible of me. But if we get this movie out in 2018, I'll be thrilled. It's a tiny little movie. We raised all the money for it in South Dakota. Actually, we raised some in Chicago, but most of it was from South Dakota, and it's a small movie. It's a little independent film that just happened to do a lot better than we expected it to. Not that we expected it to. That's the wrong thing to say. It's done a lot for us.
Right.
And we made it in the specific way that it would cause as many waves as we could. And but it's it's a movie about two people dealing with grief on a ranch. It's not an action movie, so it's a little harder to sell. And luckily we have our lead actress Jessica Roth is kind of on the upswing career-wise. And that really helped the movie kind of springboard a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was another thing is that you use, that she's from South Dakota, and then you've also used, was it someone from Pierre that you had gave some speaking parts to? And just to clarify, Jessica's not from South Dakota. She's from Colorado originally. Oh, okay. Well, my bad.
Yeah, she's from Colorado. We did go to the same film school, but we went to the same graduate school, like Boston University. But she's not. She's a Colorado girl, but she did come out to South Dakota to shoot the film. No, the local actors we used were all like the day parts, and a lot of them, were from Pierre. Like my friend Paula, who's a 5th grade teacher in Pierre, she played like a gas station attendant who had a few lines, and there were just a few other actors as well, and not even actors, like non-performers who were good at line deliveries, and they would show up and they would do their thing. There's a great community of community theater actors in Pierre that lent their hand to this as well, and just local people wanted to be in a movie. We staged an entire 4th of July party one day because the scene took place during one, and we just wanted it to be like any 4th of July party. So, we just told people to show up. People brought food, and we just had a ball, and we just started rolling camera for 3 hours and just filmed people eating and having a good time.
Nice. So I know this one was the interview supposed to just be about be about Tater Tot and Patton, but I saw that your next one of your next endeavors that you wanted to do was about human trafficking, and that's kind of apropos or it's kind of crazy that because today we had Paula Dean with the new Coliseum on, and I wonder.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Did you ever talk to her in your research for that? I think
that's funny that you mentioned that, because the new Colossus, I've been trying. Her and I keep that organization. I keep trying to cross paths, and we've just never been able to make our schedules gel. But they're a great organization. I know a few people who work in them, and somebody who started with them, started out with them, and since moved on from that project to a different one. But yeah, no, I know a lot of people in South Dakota and in Sioux Falls and in Pierre and Rapid who work on the human trafficking and sex trafficking advocacy and an awareness circuit, so to speak.
Right.
And also spoke with a lot of survivors. But yeah, New Colossus is great. I just unfortunately haven't had the chance. There's a point in my research where I just talked to so many people, and you start to hear the same things over again, which is sad because human trafficking, there's a lot of things that just repeat themselves in the scenario, and it seems like we should be able to, if something keeps happening over and over again the same way, there should be a way to stop it, but it's never that simple. And that's kind of what I discovered from writing a movie about it, was the futility of that subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
That it's very essential. It's very human, deeply human, because it's about there's all kinds of things that play into it: gender and sex and power, and especially power, and whatnot. And somehow we just can't address it. Maybe because the root of it comes from some very basic human instincts, and that's maybe one of the. What I'm saying is very like Nietzsche and very depressing, but that's kind of what I dealt with, as I was researching it. And this project came to me, kind of out of the blue. Tater Tot, at one token, was made as a calling card project for me. So one of the goals was for me to get a managerial representation in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I made a film that somebody could see and go, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. Right. So we're going to represent him as a client, and then the manager will help you build your career, make connections. They can help you raise money for your next film. They can help you get paid to write a movie. They can They can put you in front of movie stars to pitch a new project. They can do all those things, and they're kind of like a gateway into the Hollywood bubble, essentially, especially if you get the right one. And so Tater Tot, we made it. People liked it, especially Jessica, our lead actor. Her reps really liked the movie. So they just started passing the movie around. They started passing a Vimeo link around, and then eventually a guy named Alan Fisher at Principato Young, which you wouldn't know, management agencies, unless you work in the industry, you don't know them offhand. But, he represents F. Gary Gray, who just directed Fast 8 and Straight Outta Compton, and he's signing a deal to direct a new Men in Black movie. So he represents these really big guys, and this movie just happened to get in front of them, and he's like, wow, this is great. And he saw some potential in me, so he signed me as a client, and now we're working. And then when he signed me, he said, okay, you're really good at directing actors, and you're really good with drama, and you're good at kind of tonal shifts and writing, like, balance between comedy and drama and whatnot. He said, but our next project needs to be something that has some that has its ear to what's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, then we just kind of narrowed in on sex trafficking, which for me, the interest didn't come from just, it's opportunistic to tell the story, but I had a close acquaintance of mine who was sexually abused for a very long time. I just threw that in there, but I might as well, since we're talking about sex trafficking, who was abused for a very long time in a very dark way. And so I've always been kind of close and also angry with the subject matter of abuse, and how people abuse power over weaker people and whatnot. And so and emotional manipulation and all that plays into sex trafficking. And so that's how I kind of came to that project. But it's the first script I've ever written that I didn't have the idea in my head for like 5 or 10 years. So I literally had to start reading books. I had to start interviewing people. I drove around South Dakota and went to bars, went to strip clubs, and went to places that have underground prostitution, and all those things, and met as many people as I could, and then eventually found the story I wanted to tell. And now I'm all in the subject matter. And a lot of people don't want to touch it, but for me, it's something like let's try this out and see what I can find.
Right.
It's very enlightening, to say the least.
That's really cool. I'm happy that you do, were able to get in front of those people, because they, seem like they're going to have a good impact on your career and the trajectory. And, I mean, I'm all for South Dakotan people, making an impact on the larger stage.
Well, yeah, we try. I mean, the goal, too, I think a lot of people, I think South Dakota gets a bad rap as a place where maybe, like, people don't realize that there's art that happens,
yes.
Which is dumb. It's a fallacy that, it's the Midwest, there can't be art there. But also, a lot of artists kind of resent where they come from and they leave and they get trapped in the bubbles of the East or West Coast. And my goal is definitely to, I'm out in LA because I have to. It's a business thing. And I like Los Angeles, but my goal is to continue to tell stories in South Dakota, and I have grand designs of shooting many movies here. And hopefully this sex trafficking movie is also one of those movies. And on a grander scale, too. The goal is to cast the leads with movie stars and bring it out here and do that, but that's still a year away at least.
Okay.
It's a process.
Well, that's sooner than I was expecting you to say, so I mean, that's exciting. Yeah, and then,
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see, yeah. But I should preface that the most interesting thing about my human trafficking, and actually more specific in my research into sex trafficking, was meeting survivors of sex trafficking, which there are many, and a lot of them work in Sioux Falls, and you might run into them every day at a coffee shop or somewhere, and you just don't know it. Right? And it's somebody who's been through like a really hard, kind of unspeakable experience. But they rally and they're living normal lives and they have children and they're really inspirational people. So for me, that was kind of one of the great parts. I hope I can keep them involved in the process of the movies getting made.
And so it's kind of, you're focused on, you're talking about a dramatic movie with Tater Tot Patton, and then you're kind of it's going to be a drama probably with that human trafficking one. So, I mean,
It's a comedy.
Oh, it's a comedy?
No, I'm joking.
No, okay. I'm like, dang, son, that you got skills if you're going to turn that into comedy.
I'm sure somebody will make a human trafficking comedy, and it'll be in very poor taste. It's possible, though.
Yeah.
If you did it the right way. Yeah, I think it'd be possible. But no, this is a dramatic thriller in the vein of like Sicario or Wind River, or even like Silence of the Lambs, and I think almost echoes that in many ways. So it's it's heavy and dark.
So yeah, even though you're presenting South Dakota in it, your kind of a theme is the relationships between people, and is that something that's just you think you got because you grew up in South Dakota, or did it come from when were really before you were 11 in Madagascar? Like, where do you kind of get that longing for those relationships and to shine a light on the inner kind of emotions of people?
Yeah, you mentioned Madagascar, which is always some people still think I'm just making up that part of my past. All my friends are like, you didn't actually come from there, did you? It's all just a ruse. You're from Blunt, is what the joke was in high school. You're just actually from Blunt. I'm like, yeah, I am. But no, I actually grew up in Madagascar. I was born and raised. My parents were missionaries. They were part of the Lutheran Church, and they were medical missionaries, so the church basically funded their medical research, so to speak, and they went to villages and they helped build wells and build clinics and inoculate people and teach them about using condoms and all those little things. And they really, at their most basic, they were very benevolent and helped people, right? And they did it in this very tangible way. And somehow, I don't know how, but I decided that I wanted to be an artist instead. It's just the way my brain is wired, and I think my parents had a hard time with that for a while. Like, well, why? Why aren't you a scientist? But even through that, I meet a lot of artists along the way who are doing it for themselves, and they're only in it for themselves and their own self-expression, and that's great. I believe that's really important. I also think it's irresponsible in a sense, because art is a way to chronicle history. It's a way to chronicle mankind's progress. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, how can I do what my parents did, which is this very humane thing, but transfer it into art, and I guess making movies about subjects that matter, whereas where Tater Tot Patton kind of touches on addiction and touches on, the grieving process, which is a very universal thing. Human trafficking, is, like I said, it's a very human problem. And the movie also deals with family, the importance of family, not just family as like a biological unit, but just family, having somebody who cares about you enough to say, hey, don't go down that path, right? I can help you. So I grew up seeing my parents do that, whether or not I knew it as a child, that they were doing these things. And now as I grow older, I almost have a sense of inadequacy inside of me that I didn't decide to become a missionary and go off and help save the world. So it's like, how can me, engaging in this very inherently selfish profession of being a filmmaker and an artist, how can I, quote unquote, give back? Or how can I make the world a better place, I guess, which is, that's a very general concept of what I'm trying to do. But that to enlighten somebody, if somebody goes sees a movie about human trafficking, they go, oh, I did not know that this was a problem. A lot of people don't know it's a problem in the United States. I guarantee a lot of people living in Sioux Falls are oblivious. They'll go, oh, I saw that in Dateline. That's really bad. I'm like, yeah, well, it's probably happening 2 blocks away from you at, a hotel or something. Right?
Yeah.
So people, and people need to, So that's the long-winded answer to your question, I guess. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, yeah. And, you may feel inadequate compared to your parents and what they, the deeds they did throughout, but I think we're all our own, biggest critic or most, we're critical on very critical on ourselves, and just from your perspective on it, I think that you are going to have an impact, and I truly believe that just from talking to you for a little bit, of that you do have just the overview of where you want to take this and why you want to do it, which is very important. Which is very...
Yeah, I mean, we all suffer... you guys are artists. You're here, interviewing is an art. And I think... And I don't know what you guys do otherwise, but I think it's... we all have our own inadequacies, and we're always trying... I think artists... One of the things with artists is that we're always trying to fill a hole. And that hole may never be filled. I'm not saying that I'm tortured. I had a really good life. I have great parents. But, I think there's always a hole to be filled somewhere, and that's why artists create, in a sense. We're trying to either fill that hole or even excavate it to find out what's at the bottom of it, so to speak. I don't want to get too philosophical.
No.
We should, I don't know.
No, we're down on the philosophical stuff. Yeah, no, get as ephemeral, or as esoteric as you want, or whatever.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you talked about like relationships too. I think that directing. Directing is, a lot of people who may be listening, who will listen to this, may not know like the difference between like directing and producing. Producing is mostly a financial endeavor, and it's somebody who basically runs, and I'll get to the human behavior question thing in a moment, but a producer is essentially like the CEO of a movie. They're making sure the money's spent the right way, that it doesn't go over budget, that all the people are hired. Like, they basically put out all the fires. They're doing all that stuff. The director is the artist, and he's the creative, and he's the general on set. He's the guy with the vision, and above all, he's the one who's protecting the story, make sure the story's being told, and he's protecting the actors. And that's where the human behavior element comes in. And I think for me, human behavior has always been, I don't know, it's always been something that has interested me. And like when I went to Augustana College, used to be college, now university, and there I studied international government and French. And my government degree, I'd always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was like 5 years old. So that was, just to go back for a second, like I saw like E.T. when I was 5, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I didn't know what it meant. I said, but whatever this is, I want to be involved in how this was created.
Nice.
And eventually I wanted to be an actor, and I wanted to be Jim Carrey for a long time. Kind of grew up right when Jim Carrey became a big thing, like with Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, and I literally just wanted to be him. He's such a huge inspiration to me. And then eventually realized, I don't want to be in front of camera. I'd rather be the guy who's working with Jim Carrey to adjust his behavior and be like, okay, well, how do we do this and how do we do that, you know? And so eventually, but I ended up doing a government degree because I think my parents were like, they were still agog that I wanted to be a filmmaker, and they didn't discourage it, but they were hoping that I would go to college and expand my horizons and maybe be like, I'll do this instead. And so the government degree was almost a way of just me like putting off the inevitable. But I ended up really liking government. And I was kind of recruited into it by an advisor, by a government professor named Peter Schotten, who I'm sure if you guys haven't interviewed him, he would be a really interesting podcast interview. Very philosophical and funny guy. But he kind of just saw out and said, I think he'd be good for government. And I don't know, learning like the way that, a country is run, the way diplomats work, the way that Congress works, the way that egos have to be balanced in the political spectrum, how deals have to be made, you have to compromise, that pragmatism is key. All that stuff is the same thing as making a movie. Like directing is literally like running a small country, or maybe like a county. Right? It's like around being the county head or being the head of a county or something.
Right.
And you have to make sure that everybody's happy. And if everybody comes to you with a question, you better at least pretend to know what you're talking about, or you will lose the public trust. And that the public being the crew and the cast, essentially. So directing is kind of like running a country in a microcosm. And so inadvertently, I did not know that I was stepping into almost an even more important lesson on how to make movies than ever going to film school, was how to deal with personalities and how to deal with people. And that just came out of it. And so that's where human behavior has always been interesting to me, because politics is anything but just human behavior. We live in a very tumultuous time right now in politics and just the general feel of the country, and it's all about human behavior and how human behavior is changing and being influenced by other sources and whatnot. So I think that's what makes making a movie fun, is that you can tap into those things.
Absolutely. And, part of the change, reason for change in human behavior is definitely social media. How has your following on social media been, or where are the places that people can contact you and find more information about Tater Tot Patton and your future endeavors, or just about you?
So, that's a great question. I have a very love-hate relationship with social media.
Me too.
Before I get into that, I'm sure. Yeah, well, it's something. That could be a whole other podcast we can delve into. You can find me on Instagram is where I'm most active. Andrew.vhs. It's kind of a nostalgic handle, but Andrew.vhs, all lowercase.
I like it.
You can find me on there, yeah. And then I'm on Facebook, which I don't use as much. I just post stuff about movies, but really not that much there. And then and I'm kind of slowly sliding away from Facebook, just because I see it as a great tool to keep in contact with your family and friends. But I also think it's kind of a black hole of emotions, so to speak. And it gives people the illusion that they're not lonely and living on their own island. So it's something that psychologically I think is bad for humankind, and we need to figure it out. but anyway, but I'm still on it because, that said, I can see what my aunt is up to. I can see what my cousins are up to. I can also, for example, I've been able to use it as a great tool. When we were shooting Tater Tot, for example, the community of peer and for peer rose up to the challenge of helping us, and Facebook was instrumental. For example, we needed to find a ranch to shoot on, right? And I went to 50 different ranches around the state, 52 actually, trying to find the perfect ranch to shoot on, and couldn't find one. I spent a whole summer looking for it, and couldn't find what I wanted, because most ranchers now are fairly successful, so they'll have big houses, right? So eventually they'll build a big house, but I needed a crappy house.
Right.
I needed a little dilapidated little thing. So, and I was giving up hope. So I finally just posted on Facebook what was described in the screenplay. And my junior year prom date from Fort Pierre, Jamie, hello Jamie, literally just posted, that sounds exactly like my grandparents' ranch. And so I drove out to this land, which happened to be right under my nose, 17 miles north of Fort Pierre, and there was Tater Tot and Patton's location, you know? And the family that let us basically take over the ranch for 3 months.
Wow.
And shoot there. And the same with finding a 1980, I wanted to find an old 1985 Chevy Silverado pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
Went on Facebook, posted that I needed one. 20 people replied. So Facebook has a lot of great things you can do as an open forum to public fora, but I don't post about my emotions, and I don't care to hear about people's emotions on it. It's very annoying. And you can find me on Twitter too, at Andrew.Kite, I think.
Okay.
Kite, K-I-G-H-T. I think that's my Twitter handle. And then Twitter is, I didn't use it much until this election, and then I did it because I loved hearing what was going on and staying on the in and whatnot, and I'm finding it to be a useful tool. No, just Andrew Kite. So at Andrew Kite is my Twitter handle.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, yeah, social media has been great. And then the Tater Tot and Patton, you can find us on Facebook. We have a website, www.tatertotpatton.com. But if you follow me on Instagram at andrew.vhs, you'll probably get actually the most updates regarding the movie and just where it's going and how it's going and eventually where it's going to go.
And also, for Sioux Empire Podcast listeners, you can go out to our Twitter, and we posted a link to the Tater Tot and Patton trailer. So check that out, because the trailer really makes me want to watch it, and find out. Yeah,
I should send you guys the link, and then if you want, we can do a follow-up podcast sometime where we can talk about the movie, on a more detailed level. But that's up to you guys sometime.
We'd love to do that. I mean, and I'd love to talk to you again once once we're further along, or once you're further along in the process of getting the movie out there, just so that we can do hey, this week it's showing in these theaters and check it out sort of thing.
I'd love to do that once it's out. We would plan on doing a big premiere in Sioux Falls, so that'll be a heavily publicized event when it happens. I just can't tell you when yet.
Yeah, no worries there. That's awesome though. We'd probably be down to attend that too. Let's see. Well, are there questions about this movie that you haven't heard that you wish people were asking? Or that's a cop-out question, I know, but I'd like to ask it.
No, that's great. No, because you can't think of every question. One thing that I think is important about this film is that it's not a movie about addiction. It's more about the isolation that comes from grief, but which can lead to self-destructive behavior. But one thing that I wanted to make sure I did, the main character, the uncle, I guess we tell people the movie's about a girl from Los Angeles who's going through a tough time and escapes to her uncle's ranch in central South Dakota, and he's a placid alcoholic. His day is just mundane drinking, essentially. He wakes up every morning and has a hangover, and he hears a glass and cracks a raw egg into it and chugs it. That's what he does. That's his morning routine. And my goal is to depict a guy going through those motions realistically. So one thing that I did is I reached out to Face It Together, which I don't know if you've ever interviewed anybody from them, but they're a kind of a new data-driven driven recovery entity in Sioux Falls, kind of on a new frontier, essentially, and spreading very rapidly around the country in a good way. And they read the script. They vetted the script. They ended up supporting the film in a big way, but they vetted the script and said, okay, this is great. This is, these are, and then what's great about that company is it's run by people who are in recovery. And so they went, not all of them, but some of them, and they said, this rings true. And so I wanted to make sure before I dove into making the film that I got all those elements right. And then we shot the movie, and, with the actors, we tried to depict all that in the right way. And then that kind of all got vindicated when we played at the Napa Valley Film Festival in November. One of the 9 movies in competition there. And we showed 3 times, and it's Napa. So Napa, is wine country, and also, has a large number of recovering alcoholics and probably, current people dealing with chronic drinking. And I don't like the word alcoholic, which, is something that I learned through Face It Together, but I guess it's part of the vernacular. But anyway,
Right.
And so one of the more interesting things is during a Q&A during one of our screenings there, a woman stood up and said, my husband is a recovering drinker, and she said this is like one of the top 3 movies she's ever seen that depicts the everyday mundaneness of somebody who's a heavy drinker. And that to me, it almost made me I'm not a crier, but it gave me the feels when I was on stage, because I'm like, well, that's so great that somebody could be moved to that extent. And that was that's the reason that I'm a filmmaker. And so somebody can see that and go, oh wow, and be moved in that sense. So so that's something that people don't ask about much, is that angle of the film and how, when you're writing a movie, I'm also the writer and not just the director. You have to do research. And if you want to write a good movie that has real truth in it and real human emotion, you got to do your research. And so that's kind of where so Face It Together was a big help with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool to hear about all your, or at least a few of the influences for the movie and what helped you make it.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think if I have any juicier gossip about the film, other than, we shot with live rattlesnakes, which is always fun, but we didn't have any incidents, and we got to shoot. I guess one fun little thing is there's a scene in the movie where the characters get up in a little Super Cub airplane,
Nice.
and they fly over a herd of buffalo. It's kind of near the end of the film, and that was actually one of the images, when I first wrote the movie, that was going to be in the movie. And that was something that I experienced myself on the Triple U ranch where they shot Dances with Wolves a few years back, and I said, I got to put this experience in the film someday. And so Tater Tot with that movie. But up until the point of shooting, we still weren't sure if we were going to be able to get up in this plane with the lead actress, a tiny little plane. We're going to be able to get a camera up there, all those things. And also, a big wrench was thrown into our process where Ted Turner, at the time of shooting, was going to buy that ranch out.
Lovely.
And we literally shot... Yeah, so we literally shot on the ranch the day that the deed, I don't know what the terminology is, but the day that the deed of that land switched over to Ted Turner's company.
Right.
And it would have become a nightmare for us to shoot there after that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because we knew the guy, one of the ranchers from the previous owner, was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So that day was that day that all that happened. So we got there early in the morning. We got the Super Cub. We shot on the red camera, which usually can be pretty bulky, and we stripped the camera down to its bare essentials, which is basically just a little box with a lens on it. And then our cinematographer, he's from the same home. He's from Austria, and he's from the same hometown as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh. So he's ripped like Schwarzenegger too. This guy's really badass.
Okay, they're all like that from there then.
No, they are. Yeah, I think they might be I shouldn't say this, but they might be the vestiges of the Nazi experiment or something that's gone right.
That's gone right.
Oh God, I don't know if that's offensive, but I'm saying it.
Not on this podcast, no.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how irreverent we can be. I feel like I've been pretty tame, but I can be worse.
We've got the explicit label on, so don't worry about that.
That's great. But no, so then he sat in the cub of the plane, he sat, with his back towards the pilot's chair with the camera, and then the lead actress straddled him. And then the pilot flew up in the air, and and they just shot the scene like that, and we got it out. So that was like one of those things where that ended up working, and it's really like a breathless moment in the movie. But that's another thing that I love talking about, is how we're kind of racing against the clock to get this shot before it turned over to Ted Turner's land. Fun ha-ha, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, this stuff I love. I love hearing about all the little obstacles that you don't think are going to come up and then do, and, hearing how anybody handles it is, it's, and when it works out, it's always fun.
Yeah, and then this movie, like, a lot of independent films go through, like, horror stories, but honestly, this movie was so well run. One of the film's producers is a guy named Adam Emerson and his wife, Do-hee Kim. I went to high school with Adam. We became best friends because we loved the movie The Birds with Tom Hanks. We both thought the movie was hilarious. It's a good comedy.
Nice.
So that's how we became friends. And he works in Sioux Falls now for Sanford, but he produced this movie while having a full daytime job, and he basically, he just ran it like the captain of a ship, and he was the CEO of the company. And the movie, really, we shot it, and there was really not that many problems. So a lot of people have horror stories from independent shoots, but this movie went really well. By all accounts, it went really well. Nothing crazy happened. I think maybe one of the funnier moments, but nobody was there, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to believe him, but our lead actor is kind of a crazy, awesome guy who was my acting teacher in film school. He taught acting for writers and directors, because traditionally writers and directors are very inwardly and hate people. I like people, so I'm kind of on the outside of that. So he taught this class to get us out of our boxes, and he and I ended up becoming really great friends, and I actually colleagues in a sense, because he would make fart jokes in class. He's kind of very irreverent. And he'd make fart jokes. Like whenever somebody would drop like a piece of paper or a pen and would bend over, he would clock it and go, and just make these fart sounds. And I just thought it was hilarious. And I would just bust a gut. And everybody thought and it's film school, so everybody takes themselves really seriously. But I'm like, this is great. So we became friends because of that, and then ended up working on multiple movies together. And he played the lead in Tater Tot, and he's a tremendous actor. He's a well-respected Boston acting teacher and actor, and does movies every once in a while. But so what was I talking about? But he would always, because he's playing this very like reclusive character, this uncle who's heavy drinker and lives out in the prairie alone. He'd spend a lot of time by himself and would just go out to the ranch and sit there and like process things,
Yeah.
And one day he fell asleep in a chair out in the middle of the prairie. And there were just cows roaming around on this ranch, and a cow came up to him and was literally right behind him, and made a mooing sound, and he woke with a start, and then shit his pants. That happened in real life, yeah. And then he's in the middle of the ranch with no change of clothes, and in the middle of this prayer with no change of clothes, and he's pooped his pants because this innocent cow came up to him and mooed. He's like, well, who's this weird beast sitting on this chair? So that's the extent of all the disasters that happened on the film, because it was a really well-run ship, and we had a great crew and we had a great cast, and we were lucky that it turned out the way it did, because I don't think that'll happen that often in my career. There'll always be fires to put out.
Well, awesome, man. I can't wait to see it so that we can have you back and talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be a blast.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's where I would end would like to wrap up the interview on that, unless do you have something else more?
No, I don't think so. I don't want to overstay my welcome.
No.
Other than people should keep an eye out for the movie, because it was made in South Dakota, but it's people really love it out in the Hollywood industry, and it's been doing really well for me, and I think people in South Dakota will be really proud of it. And we have a great lead actress who's just in Happy Death Day and Forever My Girl and a bunch of other bigger movies coming out soon, and she's amazing. I think that people are going to really love the way that it depicts South Dakota, but also kind of peels back on some of the maybe not so great things about South Dakota, and that's life. So
Exactly.
that's what I'm trying to capture.
The Sioux Empire Podcast proudly presents this week's Shameless Plugs.
So, Seth.
Well, I would like to shamelessly plug the Sioux Empire, Sioux Empire Film Festival. We are a sponsor, and we are excited to see them again, or to go and enjoy all of the creativity from local actors, directors.
Dominic and Ari have they've got like 4 different films there, and there's at least one of them that I really wanted to, I'm going to be out of town for it, but I really wanted to see, called Mr. Pointy. That's their most recent horror film they made together. It's about an imaginary friend that's like comes to life and kills, and it looks fucking awesome. I wanted to see it.
And I would also like to shamelessly plug Andrew Kightlinger, the director of Tater Tot Patton, which will be playing at the Sioux Empire Film Festival. Make sure to catch that. That's going to be a great one. I am really excited to see that. I don't know exactly what my schedule looks like and how it will line up, but we'll figure that out. I should figure that out soon, because I could totally work that in.
There you go.
And another shameless plug to summer, and also another summer with the Sioux Empire Podcast.
Woo!
Make sure to toss a few pennies, which, they don't let you just toss a few pennies into Patreon, but if they did, toss a few more dollars than that. Because that's where it starts, I think. But anything you can help us out with, we got mouths to feed. No, just no pressure.
Thousands and thousands of mouths, and they're all growing out of Rob's back, and they must feed.
Rob
Sorry, we were doing an H.P. Lovecraft thing. Sorry.
Rob has an army. You can't have a spire without an army of hungry mouths.
Yes, this is true.
So, make him your queen, and let him rule with dragons, and give him money. Really missing Game of Thrones.
Me too. I just love that I'm some kind of Lovecraftian Khaleesi of Sioux Falls now.
Yep. Khaleesi / Kenny.
Yep.
We all know. Okay. Natasha, what do you got for shameless plug?
I don't sound like that.
You kind of do. I didn't think about it right. I wasn't going for it, honestly, but when I said it.
What do you got? Those that were already said, and those from the list.
What else have you got?
Alien Company tattoo and piercing. Just go
cool.
there.
How's Mr. Cheese doing?
Mr. Cheese Man's doing great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Pick him. He's cool.
Very good. This week I want to shamelessly plug the Sioux Empire Podcast. We bring you local content. You should support us on Patreon.
Please stop.
I was just going to say, 3 minutes, 3 things, 3, just stop.
Oh, man. No. I'm going to shamelessly plug my, speaking of creepy, the Macabre Grimoire podcast. I am going to keep hounding on that until you all listen to my horrible, horrible analysis of horrible, mysterious, macabre things. Check it out. Macabre Grimoire. The film festival, obviously, a big thank you to them, and just a reminder, we are a sponsor. A reminder that we are, 6 months out from SuperCon, and coming up here in like a month or so, we're going to have a pre-show where we're going to have some of the people from behind the scenes at SuperCon as our guests, and we're going to talk about how the prep is going for that and stuff. So stay tuned to the Sioux Empire Podcast for all your SuperCon coverage. And that's going to do it for the Sioux Empire Podcast this week. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. Like I said, reviews on iTunes really help us show up in the searches. That's a great way to support us without spending any money. If you are able, it's really cool if you can support us on Patreon. Thank you very much, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.